Okay. All right. Well, thank you all very much for being here, for doing this, and to you too as well, Beverly. What felt right to do this way is something about it's going to be on connecting to intuition and guidance, and this is something that's very very close to my heart, and I'm very driven to find different ways to explain and express it. For me, it's not just a cute spiritual thing. I feel it's a life skill. I feel it's a hygiene almost. And so if we were in person, all of us, and I had like 5-6 hours, and it would not be on Zoom, but if we were in person and I could do this for like, I could have us together for like 5-6 hours. I'd take us through what I'm going to take us through, and then spend the rest of the time doing experiential things and experiences, and getting you to, as it were, understand the instrument that you are. I don't have that opportunity, obviously. So, and I was just joking with Beverly, this is going to be a death by PowerPoint experience. But the reason why, well, not death, but the reason why, or I can get round doing something, approaching this in a bit more of a mental way, is because there is a mental component to our relationship with intuition and guidance. There is, because how spirituality is and metaphysics has often been conveyed to us. I've spoken to so many people who have expectations that they think their intuition should work in a certain way, or they're comparing themselves to other people who have come into life with a sharper, clearer connection. Just like someone else is good at the tuba, or someone's good at hockey or something, and so I'm just going to get out the gate with a couple of disclaimers here. All the views expressed during the next couple of hours are my own views and not unity of the hill country. I am solely to blame for the next 2 hours of your life, or 90 minutes if I go quickly anyway. That's probably the only thing I need to apologize in advance for, isn't it? So, all right.
No apology necessary.
Well, let me get into, and the other thing to say is, please, there's not very many of us. If you want to take a break, bathroom breaks or anything, 15 minutes, half an hour, whatever, please just say, I don't want to overload you with information as I go on through this. I do think a lot about this, but if anyone wants to take a break, just say, look, hey, can we take 5 here? And that's what we should do. And Donna, thank you for joining us.
Hi, thanks.
Okay, so I am gonna start sharing the screen, and there we go, up there. Okay, right. There's no getting out of it now. Okay. So let's just, the way that my mind works, I'm an air sign, I'm a Libra, right? And it helps me to have just an overview of what we're going to do before we do it. So I'm just going to go there for a minute. I want to take us through why we're doing this. I want to explain what I mean by guidance, okay? Because we can get lost down rabbit holes of spirit guides and angels and so on. And for the purposes of this, I'm just calling this guidance, okay? Guidance by a light and a power that loves us, okay? I'm going to be talking about sitting and connecting and actually taking the time in your own time to do this. I'm going to talk about what blocks guidance, not for the sake of there being more blocks, but for the sake of getting them out of the way. And the last thing I'm going to talk about today is discernment. That's a tremendously important part of this process. So, just talking about why I want to give this class, because I do weirder stuff than this, right? I do much weirder stuff than this, but I really feel like connecting to guidance and that greater aspect of us. It's a life skill. When we don't have connection to it, we don't feel as good. And all that we would talk about well-being and whatever you connote with that expression, this for me is a significant part of it. And the more that we are connected to it, the less confused we generally feel as well. And you know, I was just, someone asked me how my day was going. I was just sharing, I'd given a couple of sessions today. I give counseling and readings for people as part of what I do. And something I come across a lot is people are distressed when they don't know what they clearly want, don't know what they clearly think, and they're not getting that, upper direction, as it were. Wanted to do this class. Sometimes the greatest benefit of a teaching environment is to focus the mind, to cohese energy. It's like if we stick this out together for the next 90 minutes or so, then it focuses our minds, and something will peak at you, and that may be worth it all in and of itself. I can't give you the inclination to sit down and make time for yourself. I'm hoping, one of my hopes is that that gets sparked in you from our time this evening. And I'm not going to be giving you a lecture about different spirit guides or the spirit world, spiritual anatomy, that kind of thing. It may pop up here and there, but this is a different kind of lecture, okay? And another thing to say is, you know, I'm calling this class Connecting to Your Guidance, Expanding Your Intuition. I don't know what I called it. But I teach other things, right? I teach about vitality, abundance, and a lot of the process for me, and that I observe about opening up that connection, it applies equally to if you want to open up another area of your life, just to be in a better mood, if you want to be creating and manifesting better. For me, it's all the same. It's all the same pipeline it comes in. You know, let's keep going. Oh, okay. So this is what I'm not going to do, just because I don't have the time today. What I would have done, and if you're so inclined after we finish, we can get together on another occasion, and I can lead us through some experiences which open up, the pathways, our central channel, as it were. Demonstrate experiences to shift your energy, so that's easier to do, and easier to support guidance to come through. In my own training and life and so on, these words direct experience showed up immediately. And my teacher would always say that, get experience. Don't just talk about something, don't just find out about something, get an experience of it, because then no one can take an experience away from you. No one can. And so I can't, I'm not going to be giving experiences this evening. We're taking more of the mental route through it. So if I'm talking about guidance for us tonight, I'm talking about all of it. I'm talking about spirit guides. I'm talking about intuition. I'm talking about the higher self. I'm talking about common sense as well. And the filter that it all comes through. So that there's a lot in that, isn't it? I know I said I wasn't going to get into spiritual anatomy, but something I'm just going to throw in now, because I can't remember if I have this in later on. The way I equate stuff you can't see, but is a part of our world. Look, I call this third dimensional, right? I call this third dimensional. I could not show you a thought, I could not show you an emotion, but I certainly have them in abundance, and I call that stuff fourth dimensional. Fourth dimensional because it's higher than third dimension, but there's a lot in there. There's a lot in there. There's good, there's not so good. And all I'll say is then there's the fifth dimension above that, much, much more above that, which I have no comprehension about. But the fifth dimension, there is no polarity. It is a unified field. And we go into the fifth dimension plenty of times during the day. You know when you just feel what? You know when you feel that. But usually we're a composite of the third and fourth dimensions. And so what I'm talking about this evening is our relationship and communication with our third, fourth dimensional self. Okay. Let's go on. Okay. All right. So, what we're yeah, a couple more slides like this, and then we're out the gate. Okay. So I want to talk about the empowerment of listening to your own intuition, because it is extremely empowering to not have to go outside yourself to discover something. That's important. I want to talk about what quietening oneself means as well, and hopefully, ideally, give you some support for you to be, as Saint Francis would have said, an instrument of peace, an available vessel to live gracefully because of that, and to get guidance that you need to be getting when you need to get it. And just the last things to say, to in some way, and maybe this is the greatest purpose of tonight, to set your expectations of what guidance is for you in alignment with your energy signature. Forgive me, I'm just going to say that again, because that's an important sentence for me and how I interface with things. I would hope that through this evening, we at least begin to set your expectations for what guidance is for you, and that you be aligned with your energy signature. If there's, what, 5 of us together on this call, 5 or 6 of us, okay? Yes, if you saw us from a distance, we'd all look just about the same, humanoid, right? We'd look about the same, but our energy signature is so incredibly unique, each of ours, so diversely unique, and how we connect with, quantify life, and all of that. And I want this to be simple, ideally. Okay, so I'm gonna just go on for about 15 minutes, and then I'm just gonna hit pause and see if there's any questions before we finish up. Okay. What makes guidance a special thing, as distinct from ideas or imagination? It's like when we look at something as imagination, it's a little, you know, we can dismiss that. We can sometimes dismiss that. It's like, oh, it was just imagination. But when something feels like it comes from a higher place, we tend to give it more significance and hopefully follow through with it. It's like it feels purposeful. It's like it feels like part of something greater. And I'm saying this because I really feel that when we get that, from the smallest to the biggest, I think we know it. I was talking to someone yesterday earlier today, forgive me, sorry, feels like yesterday. I was talking to someone earlier today, and she had been questioning her relationship, and her and her partner, they'd had a big blow up a couple of days ago. And she woke up this morning once they resolved things, and she was feeling better about it. And she said to me, before she booked the session, she'd said, she was even wondering if I was going to tell her that this was not the right relationship. And I said to her, but you know it is. Like, you know it is. You can call it gut feel or whatever, but whatever that is, you know when you know something. So let's talk about working with expectation then. We have expectations about that. I mean, I imagine that you guys have something like this, because if you're interested enough to show up for a class about guidance, then you most likely do. One of our expectations is how guidance comes, how it should come. Certainly, this was a stumbling block for me when I started attending spiritual circles in London. Oh my God, 2002 it was. And I don't know about you guys, but I was always the person somehow sitting next to someone, the end of, and who sitting next to the person who would come out of meditation and go into this diatribe about how they saw a pink unicorn fly across the room and poo in the corner or something, and have had this incredible visual somatic experience, and then it would be my turn, and all I had was I saw a peanut or something like that. And so from being around people like that, you know, even I had an expectation, like, if you get guidance, guidance is supposed to come as a clear stream of information. And I have certainly discovered since, in the nearly 20 years since then, that that's not solely how it happens. Another expectation that we kind of work with is when guidance should come. Like, I used to think for the longest time that guidance only came when you were meditating, and you had to meditate to get guidance. And I don't believe that anymore either. And then there's what you believe guidance should be about. Guidance is often not guidance that comes in, usually not particularly, this is a judgmental word, but it's usually not interesting and fantastical. It's usually like, call your mum or something like that. And so to use a clinical expression, there's management of the expectations about what we believe guidance should be about, or what we should be getting guidance about, as it were. Go on. And if this isn't clear to you, because I don't know any of your backgrounds, you know, if this isn't clear to you, you're already getting a tremendous amount of guidance in accordance, alignment with the responsibilities you have and the life you have, the spiritual mission you have, and so on. You've been getting guidance since I've been talking for the last 20 odd minutes. So if we narrow guidance for a minute and isolate it down to guides, okay? Because that is a popular popular idea that guidance comes from spirit guides, okay? So why aren't we always seeing and hearing them? I want to talk about hearing guidance, the hearing aspect of guidance. And I'll just make a distinction now. I'm going to talk about hearing guidance, and I'm going to talk about listening to guidance, okay? Or following through. Those are mutually distinct things for me. So on this list I've got up in front of you here, assuming you can all see this, that is, how spirit or intuition, whatever, translates to you, it can come mentally through thoughts. I don't remember what all the names for this are right now. I probably should have put it down, but I believe that's clairsentience. Guidance can come to you visually. You can see things. A lot of people see things. You can hear things. You can have physical sensations. If we had the time, I would lead you through an experience where you get to physically feel what a particular spiritual signature feels like. Because for some people they don't hear, they don't see, and so on. Yet to know it's, say, Archangel Michael, when you feel the stroke across your cheek, as it were, when you're standing in the queue for the bank, sometimes that's supportive to know and be aware of. And then there's intuitive knowing. It's hard to talk about intuition because it is not one of the five senses, and we're so used to interfacing with the world with the five senses that we have, and it is simply not one of them. And to test, to try and convey what it is just to know something, when you just know, it has to be a conversation outside of the five senses. But there's probably more ways. But I imagine that just speaking to you guys now, your way of receiving intuition and guidance is at least one of those, and probably two, maybe three of them. And I may have already said this, but the language, the language of your intuition and how you receive it is absolutely married to your own natural abilities, your unique vibration, and your soul purpose. All of those things together. Is what makes, and more. We could say ancestry. We could go on all day, but all these things make up your unique vibration, your unique frequency and signature, and the way that you get intuition and speak with it is particular to you. Okay, so then we've got listening and following guidance. And I made this a point because one of my teachers, my first teacher, in fact, it was alarming how good he got guidance, alarming. But I noticed after being around him for a while, he wasn't always following that guidance, which was baffling to me, absolutely baffling to me, because I'm like, dude, I would love to be getting guidance like you do. I never said this to him, but I would love to be getting guidance like you do, and just to watch someone get guidance and then verbally say, not going to do that. Which I'm taking a tangent here, but that really showed me that a lot of the people that guidance is particularly clear for, sometimes they are the people who need to hear it the loudest and the clearest, because one of their lessons in life, this is a generalization, okay? Generalization. One of their lessons in life is discipline. So we talk about what's going on with the listening and following through with guidance. Well, we've got the ego, don't we? I don't beat on the ego. I know people grumble about it. I don't. The thing about the ego is it doesn't like things to change. In a sense, right now, we're dealing with the global and collective ego. It's kind of rubbing up against the collective spirit, and this is all in the same pot, by the way, the collective spirit that does want to grow, that does want to change, that is jubilant, for, if that's a word, highly excited for global change. And there's the global ego, as it were, that's, I'm not going to call it bad, I'm just saying doesn't want to change. Now, the thing about our spirit is it is always growing. This body, the next one, whatever, always growing, always growing. And so ego can have its way for a while, because you all know about free will, don't you? We have free will. Our ego can take the wheel for a considerable amount of time, and then after a while, it doesn't get its way. But the wiggle room with all of that is inclination. And as I said, something I really hope is that all of you take something from what we're doing this evening and use it or apply it in your own way. Now, the thing about taking action, as I like to call it here, when you follow guidance, when you follow intuition, things happen. When you follow intuition, every time you follow intuition, the muscle of intuition gets stronger. And again, I'm not talking about one of the five senses. It's your connection with it gets stronger every time. When you follow it, you are supporting more guidance to be received, because you're affirming a pathway there. When you follow through with guidance, you're actually paving the way in front of you. I don't know if you ever remember, you might be familiar with Wallace and Gromit, the claymation figures. There was a funny sketch they had years ago, and I think the dog Gromit was on this toy train going through the house, and what he was doing is he was to make sure that the train didn't crash, he was putting down train track in front of him so he could keep going. It's a very funny sketch. But that's how I feel, that's how I observe following guidance. I don't know how to finish that sentence, sorry. But it's like every time you affirm, every time you follow guidance, you are affirming that you receive it, and the energy goes ahead of you to support you. So let's say you get guidance for something zany, like I'm going to move to Africa or something. Usually it's not that excessive for us. Or anyway, move to Africa. So you say, well, I'm going to follow through with this. And I have no idea what to do, but I'm going to follow through with this. I'm going to get my passport. Okay, that sends energy ahead of you, and the next action point then easily comes to you. It magnetizes it. We'll talk in a minute, and if that doesn't make sense, you'll let me know. But well, let's go on. So what about when? What about when are we getting guidance? Okay, you're getting guidance throughout the day, anywhere, at any time. If we talk about connecting, okay, it is as much as, possibly more, the case that you get it just by being in the flow. My favorites are doing the dishes and folding laundry. No, I'm lying. I don't like folding laundry. I do it when I have to. But doing the dishes is a good one for me. I often get guidance from doing the dishes, okay? And I am more of an inclination to do that, to get guidance and receive guidance, than I am to sit and connect, okay? And there are things you can do to help and support yourself become a better available vessel for continual guidance, okay? And this is, remember, I'm of the mindset that getting guidance all the time. And so it's not just about sitting and waiting for it. It's about, well, hey, I'm going to be awake for anywhere between 12 to 20 hours of the day. I have young kids, you see. And so if I'm awake, I would like to be somewhat attuned to guidance the whole way through the day, to a degree that it works, that it works for me. Now, here's an interesting one. It's funny because my wife Anna, she's upstairs. She just said something about this. Sometimes, let's just call it spirit, or your higher consciousness, wants a bit more of your attention, really wants you to do it. And as I would say, kind of starts knocking, okay. Now, what does this feel like? What does this feel like? And I see it like a preparation. And a lot, I think, a degree of what we would call agitation, nervousness, dare I say anxiety, is actually this. It's a little more energy coming into your body than you might be used to or expecting. Because even for myself, I'm not usually expecting spirit to want my attention, which might sound baffling. Might sound baffling that I would say that, but I'm a human being. I've got so much to do, quarantine or not. I've got kids, I've got all these things going on, and I'm not always expecting the knock on the door, as it were. And I already had in this presentation about getting woken up in the middle of the night, and it actually happened last night. This is ironic. So, why I'm saying this because let's just take these two things I've said here. This thing about agitation. When we get agitated, it's really quite common to question our own confidence, competence, even. Like if I got agitated now. If I felt the experience of agitation now, I would start questioning my ability to do this in the first place. That's me, okay? Some people get nervous before they speak in public. I mean, actual public, not virtual public. And I think that's because a degree of energy that's going to be transmitted through you to the people they're going to be hearing is starting to percolate through. It then hits the central nervous system, okay, and then we have a somatic experience of it. Then there's this thing about waking up in the middle of the night. I speak to people who don't like that. They don't like waking up in the middle of the night, and they say, I want to sleep, and so on. And a question I ask people often is, well, what are you doing with the time? You know, have you, because if you're lying in bed and you're frustrated about it, then you're closed off to them. But if you actually got up and discovered why you had been woken up, because, and we'll talk about this later, but let's say that period, 2, 3, 4 in the morning, the collective consciousness is quiet. It's a whole other experience. And I'm sure a couple of you feel that, know that, and like that time of the day. But if that's competing against, screw this, I want to be asleep, it doesn't get a word, it doesn't get, that voice doesn't get to express. So if you can begin to recognize that, oh, something I'm feeling could be something else wanting my attention, if you at that point make yourself available in the way that you're naturally attuned for, you might get that awareness of what it is either that's bothering you, because it could be an aspect of you that just wants to get cleared out, or what it is you need to do. And that's guidance. So I am gonna just hit pause there, and actually we're making pretty good progress, I've got to say. I thought this was going to go on all night. But I'm going to just hit pause and, gosh, I'm not sure how to do this. I'm going to try and unshare the screen for a minute. And
would you like for me to unmute everyone?
I was just about to ask that.
Now everyone will unmute and can speak. Well,
okay.
Unless they want to be muted, they can mute themselves right back.
Oh yeah, you can all mute yourselves. You can all take yourself off camera. I'm going to just hit pause here. One, if anyone would just like a break and go to the bathroom, or if you have any questions and want me to explain something better.
I'd like a little break, please.
Okay.
Thank
All right.
you.
5 minutes.
Yeah, 5 minutes. Cool.
I'll just pause the recording real quick, and then Mandy can get her reply. Go ahead, Mark.
So I was really enjoying your describing the way guidance comes through. And what occurred to me is that it shows the reflection of each person's way of receiving information.
Yes.
And that led to the deeper thought that it's our way of knowing the unknowable. So the one that spoke to me was intuition, because I have a big thing about personal power. It's like, I don't have to get spirit guides or it comes from another source. It's something that comes to me. So it's intuition. But every one of them is equally valid. It's a way that we connect with what can't be spoken, what can't be described. That's the unknowable that I was talking about.
Yes, and I think that just listening to you there, Mark, that's your sharing is very well self-contained. So there's like 3 things I'm trying to say at the same time.
Can you bring up that slide that talked about the different ways that people receive guidance?
Oh, sure. Let me just go find that again. There it is. Okay. Let me just, there we are. Yeah. So.
You'll have to share it.
Oh, I do. I'm sorry. I thought I was sharing. Am I not sharing anymore? You're not seeing that?
It's at the top.
I
I see it.
Yeah, I've I've got my option here is to stop. So I think I.
Oh, interesting.
There was another slide before this one
Oh,
that talked about the different ways of receiving the guidance. And it listed different things. Like the one that spoke out to me was intuition, but there were other ones like spirit guides. It was before this, I believe. Maybe two or three slides back.
Let me see. Was it? Sure, it wasn't that one. All right. Well, I think I understand what you're saying, and all I think that would be useful to respond to what you're saying, because it is that what we're trying to do tonight is get more comfortable with the instrument that we are. I didn't say this earlier on, but it's almost like discovering what instrument in the orchestra we are. And I might want to be a great big double bass, but if I'm actually a saxophone, the sooner I accept I'm a saxophone and stop trying to be a double bass, the more beautiful music I can make with the saxophone. Oh, and someone else, Donna, did you have something you were sharing?
No, I'm fine.
Okay, someone.
It was Mandy.
It was Mandy was saying.
I get tinnitus,
yeah,
and it's different from usual tinnitus, and I feel like it is my ancestors, my spirit guides downloading information, but I don't understand what it is. So I just always ask, okay, let me be able to translate that.
Yes. So two things I'll speak to there. Thank you, Mandy. One is, if you're unfamiliar with what Mandy's talking about, you may have had the experience where all of a sudden you do nothing, and then it's almost like a slight pressure shift in your ears, and you hear something like, ooh, or it's more like, ooh, or something
exactly.
Something like that. And now, so that for me is a spirit guide coming very, very close. What we don't know in that exact moment, and I'm slightly veering off the subject of this class, but I want to honour the question, as it were, that it's a spirit guide coming very close to us. It can be something like an ancestor. It can be something else, just like a spirit that has magnetized towards a higher vibrational person, because that spirit's just looking to be released somewhere. It could be that. It could be a spirit that wants the experience of being around you for a while, and all these things. For me, it's all good because it's all God. And I don't worry about I don't like lots and lots of energies that are out there. I don't go looking for it. But if something is drawn to me, I will, I'll do my best to elevate it, communicate with it. Forgive me taking a tangent on a tangent here. Once, this is a couple of years ago, I wake up and I have that buzzing in my ear that you're talking about, Mandy. And to begin with, I'm like, okay. And then as the day went on, I'm like, I'm getting a bit fed up with this now. could you just go? And it wasn't going. And I sort of forgot about it. And then later on in the day, I went to Target because I like to do that. And it was like 100-degree day, like you get here in the summers. And there was a lady standing outside asking for money. And so I parked the car, went up to this lady, And I said, look, what do you need? I'm going into Target. What do you need? So she asked me for some stuff. I went and got it, came back out, realized I'd gotten too much stuff for her to get on the bus. So I said, where do you want to go to? She started driving. And then she started talking about, I think it was her husband who had died a few years ago. And cut a long story short, I realized that buzzing was her husband that was just looking to have some sort of connection with her. And again, I'm not going to bore you with the details, but that to me just expressed the perfection of how these things can happen really beautifully. The other thing you shared there, Mandy, about the download, without, when, as it were, trusting it's a download, but not maybe having the information about it. I'm going to speak to that a bit later, okay?
Okay.
All right, so on with the show. Yeah, okay, so let's talk about sitting and connecting. If you can, if we can enroll you in that, in sitting and connecting, making time for this, here are some questions to ponder, to reflect on. Now, by the way, if you want, I can send you this this presentation stuff, or you can have the recording of this and so on. And I don't know if you can totally see the whole sentence here, but questions to ask yourself, like, what actually happens when you make time to sit and connect? What actually happens? If there's resistance, what's in the resistance to getting quiet? What is in that? Because we can be resistant, but we perpetuate resistance when we don't look at it. How long do you give it before you stand up and walk off? If there's distractions, what distractions do you create? What do you find is suddenly very interesting in the household or whatever when you sit down and connect with yourself? And another question is, do you have when you go and sit down, do you have an intention? Do you have an intention? Obviously, if we're going to go and sit down somewhere, we're going to go and sit down in a room, right? A third-dimensional room. So there are external variables that affect our connection experience, right? As I said earlier, sometimes the collective consciousness is very loud, like on Monday morning, 8 a.m. Monday morning, wherever it is you live, is not a good time to meditate because the collective consciousness is not happy because it's going to work on a Monday morning. Usually, most people are. Whereas, say, 4 a.m. on Saturday morning, as it were, should it happen, is an extremely good time. People are quiet, they're asleep. I love Christmas Eve. It is an astonishing time to connect. Christmas Eve is the winter solstice. It's quiet. It's so quiet. And then, of course, when there are no distractions at home. Later, we'll talk about, in a bit, rather, we'll talk about the brainwave, the frequency of brainwave firing and how that affects the connection. Because let's say if you get home from a day at work and you're maybe stressed from traffic, stressed from the day, a little caffeinated maybe, it's not a good time. It's not a good time. You're not wired and attuned for it. So let's start talking about self-attunement there. And what I mean by that is, and I'm slightly drawing on other areas here, like more classic spiritual connection or channeling, as it were. And that point number 2 I have there. If you can imagine, let's just say you want to connect with the Archangel Gabriel, say. If you can follow where I'm going with this. So we want to connect with the Archangel Gabriel. So if just to pluck numbers out of nowhere, let's say our frequency is 2000 watts. And let's say the frequency of the Archangel Gabriel is 2 billion watts. Like, we have to make ours a little brighter, and that energy has to make their energy a little dimmer for us to connect. So we do have to raise our energy somewhat. And you know, Mark was just sharing earlier that, or commenting earlier rather, that there is this uniqueness in how we recognize and feel and hear intuition and so on. And so, just in a similar sense, the way that we raise our energy field, the sort of things that expand us, they're different for each one of us, and different on different days, different on different times, and so on. And the process of quietening ourselves as well will be particular to each of us. But this slide right here, this might be the clincher for one of you here. If we talk about meditating for connecting, because I've talked about other stuff, I've talked about doing the dishes and stuff like that. If you meditate for connecting, at the very, very least, in my perspective, it's 2 steps. First of all, there's clearing the mind. And I'll gladly talk more about this at the end. Clearing the mind, which in more scientific terms, we are shifting from beta brainwave frequency firing to alpha. I don't know the numbers here. I always forget them. But let's just say right now, and for this time we're together, we're in beta. We're in beta. And beta, when you're in the beta brainwave frequency, you're talking, you're conversing, you're agreeing, disagreeing, analyzing, thinking. We might call that the left side of the brain, which is tremendously useful for a lot of what we do during the day. It's the analytical side of us. And that I quantify as beta. Now, alpha is the next slowest. Now, you will have heard of other things like theta and delta, and I'm not going to get into them here. I'm not going to get into them here. They're wonderful. They have their own purposes, but they're not relevant to what we're doing here right now. Alpha is akin to what you would experience regularly as things like daydreaming. It's noticeably slower rate of firing than beta. We can call it the right side of the brain. That's the creative, the parallel processing, the intuitive, the feminine. Okay, the feminine. And I would say that is the brainwave activity firing in which intuition easily flows. And it's paradoxical, because if you're sitting there asking yourself, am I an alpha yet? Am I an alpha yet? You're not. You're not. Because you don't have those thoughts when you're in alpha. So music therapy, science says, take a piece of music that's about 60 beats per minute, slow. Okay, Mozart is the usual go-to, and you would need to listen to that for about 7 to 10 minutes in order to entrain your brainwave firing from one to the other. 7 to 10 minutes. I'm saying this because, and I've come across it just so often, when people actually make the time to sit down and receive, but they sit down in the wrong state of mind, or still agitated. They sit for 2 or 3 minutes, which is an eternity, isn't it? Sometimes they don't feel any better, and they get up and walk off. Whereas if they just stuck it out for 8-9 minutes, maybe they would have had a whole different experience. Just keeping with this point for a moment, I'm an air sign. There's always lots of random crap floating around my head. So I actually do an exercise to eliminate as much of that as possible. Talk about that in a minute too. So anything that will actually and tangibly clear your mind, I would strongly recommend you do it. If we decide to do this again, I will really get into that. Because you've all heard of meditations where you're supposed to watch the clouds going by. It's never worked for me until I clear my mind. Then we can do the second part here, which is just to sit in presence. It is so much easier to allow guidance when there isn't the maelstrom of turbulence flowing through and activating us. So for me, the process of sitting and connecting is at the very least 2 steps. To clear the mind first, but intentionally and actively clear the mind first, and start getting that brain entrainment going, and then it's just sitting and allowing. But I would not do the second thing first. And a bit later, you'll let me know if that hasn't made sense to you, okay? All right, so continuing with the sitting and connecting thing, and revisiting what Mandy said earlier about you're getting a download, you're getting that woo type thing, you're getting a download, something's there, but you're not getting guidance. I would say that's to allow that to be, to allow yourself to receive like that. I would say that's tremendously important too. So this is my expression, like putting gas in the car. Receiving the download is like putting gas in the car. You might not know where to go or even why, but if there's gas in the car, you'll certainly be able to get there. And if I use this word spirit for a minute, spirit loves us dearly, okay? It's not all great in the astral and beyond and so on, but the love of spirit that guides us loves us phenomenally. That's an understatement of the millennium. Loves us very, very much. And so when we give our attention to it, when we make ourselves available to it, they're like, it's a celebration. So it's only going to support us. And the grace of this type of thing is if we've sat down and just let ourselves imbibe it or receive the download, as Mandy said, then there's a bunch of experiences we don't have to have. We don't know if we've saved ourselves from a whole bunch of wrong decisions. We don't know if that download has just got us to the right place without us even knowing it. Okay, and so receptivity is it's either the key or it's a key here. Remember, it's a flow of energy that we are allowing in. If it's guidance, if it's a download, it's a flow of energy that we're allowing in. And because this is something that gets taught, and I know I'm teaching at the moment, but I think we shouldn't be pulling on it. Certainly not forcing it. That's just not the nature of what we're being present to. It just isn't. If I'm going to dig something out in the garden, tree root or something, I'll pull on that. I'll force that out because that's the nature of what I'm dealing with. But guidance, it's not something that can be forced out. So let's talk about what blocks guidance. And let me be clear. I'm not doing a Debbie Downer here. I think it's good to know about what blocks guidance so that you can get your hands on it, so to speak, and get it out of the way. I see us like a glorified drain pipe, okay? And if something's blocking a drain pipe, then you get your hands on it, throw it away, and on you go. The drain pipe works better. But what is blocking our guidance? It's clutter. It's energetic clutter, which, by the way, probably started as good, clean energy. But energy is like food. And if you leave food too long. Like my wife, she buys lots of bananas that don't get eaten. I've got to talk to her about it. And she's always like, no, we'll make banana bread. Or the kids like frozen bananas. But we got some very smelly bananas sitting upstairs. But they started as delightful, ripe bananas. Anyway, so energy that is currently cluttering us or blocking us started as clean energy. It then didn't move through, so it kind of started to accumulate. And a lot of what we experience as confusion and even stress, doubt, self-questioning is down to an accumulation of energy. Now, I'm meeting most of you guys for the first time. Beverly knows me as a sound healer, and a lot of what I work on is that. And people feel better after I've worked on them because, in some respect, just because I've gotten that out of the way. But anyway, where is this coming from? It's coming from open loops, by which I mean, let's say, silly example, but let's say you have someone says to you, oh, we should meet up and play chess or something, and you say yes. Even if it was just so you wouldn't hurt their feelings, but you said yes. So you've got a hook out there of, I'm going to meet up with Dave and play chess one day. Even though you don't want to, and you probably never will, it's still out there. And so there's energy going towards that. And I've just made a silly example, but I'm sure you've all said yes to things that you don't want to do. Or there's things that you do have to do that you haven't done yet, and it's an open loop. It's an open loop. I'll give you another example of that. If there's things you're trying to remember, and you're keeping them in your head, like, oh, can't forget, gotta phone the vet, phone the vet, don't want to forget it, phone the vet. That silly little piece of information can take up so much space in your available channel. And just by writing that down, you clear it up, you open it back up again. Okay. Moving on, avoidance is a tremendous waste of energy. It takes so much energy to try and stop thinking something you don't want to think about. Stress and shame, similarly. Now, these look different in the energy field, okay? So things like open loops, they're easier to address. When we're getting into shame, that's a very messy energy pattern. And the frustrating thing about dealing with that stuff is it hides. It moves around. It's like as soon as you see it, it skips off behind you. And I don't like shame. I don't love the word, but it is. But we all have something. We all have something. And the more that we can chase that and understand it and work it through, honestly, the more evolved we become, really. So it can also impede our connection when we're procrastinating about connecting, okay? And funny, my wife just said this to me barely half an hour before I got on this call. Literally that very thing. Like it interrupts your day when you know you've got to sit down and receive something, but you don't, and then you get frustrated with yourself, which then compounds the impedance. Let's go a little further with this, almost there with this thing about blocking guidance. I'm being a bit reductive here, but it's getting stuck, energy or emotion, whatever it is, it gets stuck in a mental body, in your mind, thoughts and ideas. Okay? It gets stuck in a physical body as well. And so often the things like stomach aches, little pinches that you get is actually stuck energy. Now, if we have a blockage in our, or an impedance in our connection that's stopping us from getting clarity, hearing intuition, any of these things, we perpetuate that by excessive caffeine. Now, I love coffee, and then there's a point. I don't love being jittery. Okay, caffeine stimulates the central nervous system, the cardiovascular system as well, and spirit, intuition, it's got to get through that. So we're only making it harder when we keep ourselves activated. And of course, unprocessed emotions. I know I've kind of said that already a couple of times, but it is very tiring, very taxing upon us to try not to feel something that we're feeling. And so this word elimination, I love that I get to say that word in this context, because we're only here together because of a unity connection, right? And elimination is one of the 12 powers, and it's elimination of dross energy, of useless energy. And when we can eliminate that on the mental and the emotional, ideally both, our channel, our connection opens up. It is binary. It's binary. It's unavoidable. So I don't love talking about blockage for its own sake, but I am interested in it if understanding it will help get rid of it and thereby clean up the connection. I find that very interesting. So okay, I'm sorry, I thought I was done with this blocking part. That's fine. Do you remember at the start, I was talking about expectation and I was talking about comparison as two things which get in our way. Expectation of when and how we should be getting guidance and so on, and comparison that other people are better at it or something like that. Given that I don't have much time with you guys this evening, let me just say this. A big component of receiving guidance and intuition is actually distracting or occupying the left side of the brain enough, but not too much. So if I could knit, I would knit. That's a good mechanical activity that busies the left side of the brain enough, but not too much. I like to draw sometimes. I like to draw. That's a good way for me to open up my right side of my brain. I've said dishes, I've said laundry. These sound like mundane things, but honestly, spirit will take any opportunity that you're distracted enough. Oh, driving. I'm sure you will get guidance and hear your intuition when you're driving as well. That sort of thing. Just moving on here, talk about discernment. Okay, now this is the last part I'm on now. So when I'm talking about discernment about the guidance, thoughts, and information you're getting. Okay, let's be somewhat rhetorical. How do you know it's guidance as opposed to thoughts? Okay, guidance as opposed to thoughts, and you might not find this a very satisfactory answer, perhaps, but you know when it's guidance and you know when it's thoughts. And the know that I'm talking about, that's a deep knowing. That's an inner knowing. It's a gut feel. It's a gut feel that doubt, as it were, doubt feels different to inspiration. Doubt feels heavy. Doubt feels constricted. Inspiration feels open, isn't it? Then, of course, there are unsupportive energies out there. There are. I'm not gonna give it much airtime right now. If anyone is interested in how to deal with that, there's a book I highly recommend, and I'll get there at the end. But that's the only context I'm going to talk about it. let's just put it like this. If guidance is coming in to do something that you know is unwise, or affects separation in some way, and so on and so on and so on, that's the sort of time to be exercising your discernment. Discernment is a sibling of intuition. If intuition is a little above that, discernment is where common sense starts to join with it. Okay, because we are an incredible thing. This, and yeah, I'm not gonna go any further than that. I hope that makes sense. You'll tell me if it doesn't. Okay, and then the last thing I'll say, then there's, because I don't really know any of you guys that are on this call right now. Some of you may get very clear guidance. Some of you might be used to the experience where it's just easier to get guidance for other people. You're just around someone, you hear information. It's all there, and it's almost annoying. Like I'm around. Whenever I'm around people or whatever, I hear information for them. And so what I want to say, and this isn't for all of you, but it really might be for one or two of you. If you get guidance for other people, you have a responsibility to convey and pass it on responsibly. Responsibility. I want to say integrate it first. Integrate it first. You know why? Because if I let's say have some guidance to share with Beverly, say, then in Beverly's mind, I'm saying it to her, not it's come from intuition or spirit and through me. In her mind, I have said it to her, and so if she has a grievance with it, she's gonna bring it up with me, of course, because I'm the physical mouth that's passed it on. So that's one thing to say, to be responsible with it, to integrate it, be comfortable with that you are going to say it. The other side of that is not to hold on to it, because, and this I come across a lot with people, that they're uncomfortable with sharing guidance for people. And the thing is, if you're attuned enough to be getting information for other people, and however it comes, then again, you have a responsibility to share it. It's not yours to hold on to. And in the very act of sharing guidance and information, even though you may have stuff about it and think this isn't accurate, it's not clear or whatever, as you share, you are supporting more to come. I'll go back to my drain pipe analogy. You know, sometimes you get back from holiday, you run the tap and the water is a bit rusty or whatever. But by running the tap a little bit, the flow of water becomes clear again, doesn't it? Okay, so I'm complete, and I'm just going to make a couple of summary points here. The first is to actually take the time to unclutter, to disentangle your mind and mental body is actually a lot of the work you need to do to, well, we're talking about connect with guides and guidance, but also to feel better, to raise your energy, to increase your abundance. It's all wrapped up together. It's all wrapped up together. If you can, and we would do this if we had more time. I'm not going to do it tonight, but if you can be uncluttering your mind, however that works for you tangibly, it will affect all of what I've just said, without doing anything else, because you are this thing is a channel for spirit. Right now, it's channeling the spirit that you are. The body you've got is receiving the spirit that you are. And so if you get the dross and the mess out of the way as much as possible, more energy is going to come into you. And only grace comes from that. And the other things to say is to remember that intuition, it's like a muscle. And the more you use it, the more you follow it, the stronger it gets. The stronger it gets. And the last thing I'll say is I'm kind of repeating myself there, but do experiments to confirm your guidance. If you get a flash of something, you get a burst of inspiration, which you know, that word literally means inspiritation. It's to be imbibed with spirit. Follow it through. See what happens. It's a relationship of trust with you, and as Mark said, the unknowable. Okay, we got there. Is everyone still alive? That was quiet. Someone's alive.
I'm here.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Let me just stop the share. Okay. Oh, we got some more people joined. Hello there.
Hello.
Does anyone want to ask some questions just now that we got to the end there?
Sometimes I hear clicks.
I'm sorry.
I'm responding to something Mandy said earlier. She gets a whistle or tinnitus kind of thing. I get clicks. And I even asked an ear doctor about it, and they'd be like, "Were you crazy?" I remember reading a who said she received her spirit guide, her special messenger clicks, and I'm wondering if that's what's happening.
I would say so. I would say it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so Joshua, if you're saying verify it, or, you know, pay attention so that you can know that you're receiving guidance, do you have a recommendation for Donna about how she might, thinking that that's what it is, how would she go about verifying or validating that that's
Right.
what she,
Yeah, that's a really good question. Okay, there's two things I would say. The first is, you know, you're really going to be reacting to it in the moment because you don't know when it's going to happen. So I would say when you start to hear that, and I think it's when, not an if, just sit down and wait. Just sit down and wait. And you're just going to have to see what happens. That's the first thing I have to say, because you're going to be reacting to that in the moment. The other thing is taking more of a long view about it. And if it was me, I would be working more on keeping my mental body clear. So just like if I was preparing for a marathon or something like that, right? Where I would need to be using my body in a bit more of an exerted way for a longer time. I'm not just going to go and run a marathon, am I? I'm going to build up to it. So what I'm talking about is working on having a clearer mind for a longer time. I've said how I like to do that. I like to do that with writing, because I can directly get information out of my head, and I do that often. That would be my recommendation if you're that interested in it. Because there's some you know, in all of us there are a few cobwebs to be blown out, a bit of rust to be cleared out with all of us. But that's what I would say. First of all, when it happens, sit down and wait and see what happens. And the other is take a longer view of it.
Thank you.
Donna, have you noticed a particular time when you've had these clicks happen?
Yes, it's often when I'm not about to fall asleep, but just kind of lying down and resting.
Hmm. That's interesting. That's really interesting because, and I'm sort of more bringing that into my approach here, if that's okay. But what I'm hearing is that when that brainwave activity shift starts to happen, like, you know, when you're getting nearer to sleep, so it's the brainwave firing is slowing down. That's when that communication starts to happen. So any of the ways that you could, and there are a bunch of ways that you can intentionally do brain entrainment, and you could do it tonight. You do it in the morning. That's if you're interested in exploring it. Okay.
It seems like maybe if she got the clicks and she's like, okay, I'm willing to receive whatever information is being shared with me, and then goes to sleep, and first thing in the morning begins to write before anything else happens. Do you think that would be helpful? Or
I think it's helpful. I just think the whole. I just think it can be. I think in time it can all happen in the moment. Yeah. Yes. Absolutely. Have a pen and paper by the bed. Absolutely. Yes. Yes. For the same reasons. But I feel like you could. I feel like you could attune yourself to be. That's all I'm trying to say.
so you would recommend, if she is interested in what that's about, is maybe to allow that and then see what's coming to her at that moment.
Yes, and also to explore some of the different ways to affect brain entrainment as well.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have questions or comments?
This has been very helpful. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Yeah, I found it fascinating, and I relate with a lot of what you shared. So I have the waking up at night and the messages for other people. I have a lot of different things that happen.
I bet you
And,
do. I bet you do.
yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, that's probably enough death by PowerPoint for one night.
So I just want to mention that Joshua has agreed to come on. You know, this is a love offering basis. Joshua, do you want to type in your, I think we had it in the initial email.
Yeah, why don't we do that?
In the chat box, if someone wants to go on your website and make a donation.
Yeah, I'm not sure I write this. I don't see a chat box.
Oh, yeah.
There's a millennial around.
Okay. It's joshuainacio.com. Is that right?
It's, my PayPal thing is steponthebridge@gmail.com.
What on the bridge?
Step.
Yeah, thank you.
steponthebridge@gmail.
Yeah, that's my PayPal. Yeah.
Okay, I typed it in. You can't see the chat box?
I can now. Okay. Oh.
Do you see it?
Oh, now I do. Yes.
Okay. Is that correct? Steponthebridge?
Yeah.
@gmail.com.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And I think if you're interested, maybe one of those Tuesdays, we'll have you come back and do something a little experiential, or however it's up to you.
I'd love to. So it'll take a different form. You guys will be doing more, and with the intention that you, like I say, you get to have your own experience. We'll try 2 or 3 different things, and that would be the intention. So yeah, I'd deal with if you guys would like, I would gladly would, yes.
Fantastic. I think right now, I think a lot of people are feeling the intensity of the energy shifting. And, you know, with staying at home more, we're all experiencing much more quieting of our mind. The activities are less. And I just think for me, it certainly has intensified my experience. And so it's good to, you know, just sort of put it all in perspective. A friend of mine called me this week and said they'd had a panic attack in the night. And when you were describing that energy coming in the night, and if you're not attuning to it, it can feel like something unmanageable. So I think the more,
Very stressful. Yes, yes.
so the more information we have about, you know, what we're noticing and what's going on with us, whether it relates to us or not, information is a tool. So thank you so much.
Pleasure. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you all very much. And Beverly, thank you. Of course, thank you. And have a great evening, everyone.
I've
Thank you,
enjoyed
you
it,
too, Joshua.
Thank you.
We really appreciate you. Good night, all. Thanks for coming.